This is EntreEd Talk, the podcast for entrepreneurial educators by entrepreneurial educators. We are your hosts, Toi Hirschman and
Amber Ravenscroft. This podcast is created by the National Consortium for Entrepreneurship Education, or EntreEd for short.
All right. Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of EntreEd Talk. We are so excited today to have Charles Parisi with us on the podcast. Charles is a true serial entrepreneur and has over 30 years of entrepreneurial experience working for startup companies and launching, funding, and exiting multiple startup companies of his own. His experience in marketing, sales, and distribution in industries ranging from consumer packaged goods and nutritional supplements to financial services and nonprofits has been marked by creativity, discipline, and engaged enthusiasm. His various endeavors represented many first-to-market products and distribution strategies. He's the current CEO of Cloudcast Media and co-founder of Asymmetrical Evolution, the developers of the Sealpreneurship program for high school students and incarcerated adults. Welcome, 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 Charles. We're so excited to have you today.
I'm so happy to be here. Thank you for inviting me. I appreciate it.
This is great. This is great. So let's get started. Your bio is really impressive, and we had to, chop it up in order to fit it on a page. So why don't you take a few minutes and talk a little bit more about your experience in the startup world?
Thank you for giving me that opportunity. No, I'd love to talk a little bit about it. For me, and it really dovetails nicely with education and everything I've tried to do in the education space, because I felt like I knew at a very young age what I wanted to do, which was work for myself. And I didn't know the industry. And I think that's how all entrepreneurs, in some sense, start their lives. They don't know exactly what they're going to end up doing. But I knew it at a young age. So, at a very, very early part of my life, whether it was having paper routes, selling candy, selling all different types of things, I was always, hustling, doing something. And so I knew at a young age that I just wanted to do something on my own. And fortunately in life, kind of worked out that way. And it turned out to be a blessing in many respects, not only from an enthusiasm perspective and a curiosity part of my life, but also really helped me actually in many respects become a better father because of the flexibility and the time it gave me to be present and be engaged and wasn't at a desk per se, nonstop from, a 9 to 5, kind of life. So I was blessed in many ways in terms of that particular path.
So I'm fascinated by the idea of having a lot of experience in the startup and then also exiting, because I think a lot of students think of entrepreneurship as owning their own business and staying in that business and they know small business, but the startup world is a little obscure to people.
Yeah,
so.
There is a difference. And I will say, in fact, because I'm in the middle of a startup now, Cloudcast Media. And I tell everyone, and in fact, I'm doing a podcast on the podcasting, on the whole entrepreneurial journey. I'm putting it on a podcast, from the trials and the tribulations and starting over because I'm 57 years old. And I always think about not exit strategy per se, but it's principle number 2 for me, which I'm happy to share with you because it ties into some of the things I like to talk to young students about. For me, I have about four key principles in launching something. One, we all have to be having a lot of fun, because if the atmosphere isn't fun and enjoyable, you're never going to get the results you're actually striving to obtain. So I like to have the environment really, really, cool and fun. And I don't mean necessarily free Skittles and candy, but everyone has to really enjoy each other. And that really what I'm really articulating is the culture of the place. If you don't get the culture right from the get-go, you're going to have a problem down the road. So I really focus on that in many respects in terms of, the folks that are on the team and how you build that team and the complementary skill sets and personality. So I like to have a really fun, enjoyable environment, because what I tell people, and this is true my entire life, I never really understood what was the magic of, thank God it's Friday. And I never really understood what was the problem of Mondays, because to me, it's fluid. The days are fluid. You're having a great time. What's the magic of ending my week and wanting to get home? To me, that just says I'm not really overly thrilled with what I'm doing and I just need a break from it. I've never experienced that. I can honestly say I've never experienced that. And I hope that if I can touch one life and they live that life, that'll have meaning. So that first principle is, let's have a lot of fun together. Let's enjoy what we're doing. Number two is let's build something that has value to someone else. Now that's called exit in the world of investing and startup companies. But to me, it's about building value. Because I have a little bit of maybe too much curiosity that my brain's never been wrapped around, doing something for the next 20 or 25 years. So I'm always thinking about, I want to build it, I want to grow it, and I want to move on to try something new and see if the principles can apply to a variety of industries. And knock on wood, on a few occasions it has, and sometimes it hasn't. And you have to learn from, those opportunities. So I don't necessarily think of exit, but I think of building value. And if you build value, someone else is actually going to want it. The third principle is we're not going to lose money. And I know in the world of startups and venture capital investing, the idea of burning through several billion dollars of cash is all the rage. And let's create a unicorn. Again, maybe because of my personal background, which I'm happy to share later when we talk about education, I don't understand the concept. I think the path to profitability needs to be a short one. And so don't lose a lot of money. And then the fourth principle is we're going to make money. And I do it in that order too, because you can't focus on profits right away and ignore culture, ignore the importance of investing in the product and distribution and all those things. And it's a laddering approach, but it starts with that foundation of the culture of the place, the chemistry of the people involved, the buy-in to where we're going together, and then enjoying each other's company. We just spend a lot of time together, and it's kind of like I'm sure we'll talk at some point about sealpreneurship. And in the SEALs, you're talking brotherhood. But in a company, listen, we're a team here. We have to enjoy each other's company as much as possible. Obviously, as it grows, personalities creep in. You don't necessarily enjoy everyone. So hopefully that addressed your question about exit.
Yeah, no, actually, that was really helpful for me because that was a very deep dive, but also very applicable to schools. And I know Toi was nodding her head the whole time because a lot of those concepts could be translated into what this looks like in entrepreneurial programming in a school easily. So
no question about it. In fact, I applied some of those same principles, with our team, at the school. So I think they're applicable. And I think in many respects, that's why I love talking about entrepreneurship and helping folks under entrepreneurship, because it's just foundational that allows you to respond to whatever opportunities, come your way in life. And to me, that's what I talk about all the time, with young folks that I mentor or companies or opportunities, because the reality is if you look at, say, the job market today, one of the hot jobs in America, let's say, is a social media marketing specialist. There's no one I know of graduating high school 10, 15 years ago was building their career around, I'm going to be a social media marketing specialist someday, because it didn't exist.
Right.
So the key is, what's the foundation set of skills that you want to give to everyone that allows them to respond when opportunities present themselves, like social media marketing. And I think that's where entrepreneurship is a really important component of education, because it's really teaching self. It's about investing in oneself. The message we always deliver, and I ask the question sometimes of students, what's the single most valuable asset you'll ever own? And you'll get a variety of answers, but the answer is yourself. You are your number one asset. Okay. And once you recognize that, then the question is, how am I going to grow this asset? How am I going to make it as valuable as possible? How am I going to deliver the returns to myself and to society that I want to realize? And what we're talking about is entrepreneurship. And that's why I think it's so important that is a fundamental level in education.
I love that you said all of that, because that is exactly what we try to instill in young people and in schools in general. That, I love that you said that you knew you didn't want to work for somebody else, but you didn't know the industry. I love that you said that, because there's so many kids and young people and 40-year-olds and that are like, I want to be an entrepreneur. I want to build something. I want to work for myself. But I have no clue what it is. I just know that I don't want to work for somebody else. And it's really interesting that you said that, because that's a hurdle that people.
No, it is. And I tell you, this is one of the things, and I know we're touching very fluidly across a variety of subject here, and it's great because just yesterday, in fact, I had a conversation with a young man who wasn't sure what he was passionate about. And I said, well, first of all, that's okay, because you don't know when you're going to find your passion, but you do need to find it. Because what I preach to him, and again, a lot of what I talk to young people about is the same conversations I've had, with my daughter, which is excellence in life is a process. And a part of being excellent at anything is you have to put in the time. But you're not going to put in the time into things you simply don't enjoy. So you have to find what you're going to love to do, because then you'll put in the time to be excellent about it. It's this virtuous, cycle, and one doesn't precede the other necessarily, but because you have to have a work ethic. But the key is the way you maximize your work effort and your results is finding something you're crazy about doing, and you just get sucked into it. And then the hours just go by, and the 168 hours in a week fly by, and you love what you're doing. And so for me, I think, I didn't know what I wanted to do, but I had my personality was probably because I was a stubborn, wisecracking kid. And I maybe didn't want people telling me what to do. And so I wanted to do my own thing. So I always felt like that was kind of my DNA. And then it was a matter of, okay, well, how am I going to apply this someday? But again, there were steps I did along the way to try to help me learn the process of what entrepreneurship is. And I'll just give you a couple of examples too, because when I first left, when I graduated college, I intentionally worked for a small business. And it was a kind of interesting vertically integrated business in New York City that they owned parking garages, they owned automobile dealerships, and then they also owned car rental locations throughout Manhattan. So it was the perfectly vertically integrated business that the dealership supplied the cars for the rental agency. Then they owned parking garages, because in New York, you really can't rent a car for one day. You end up having to rent it for 4 days and parking it for 3 because there's such demand. And so he was literally making money from every element of the food chain. And then I learned the self-insurance game. Like, how did he really make money was self-insurance on the automobile. So I intentionally tried to insert myself into a very hands-on position where I could learn all aspects of it. Then I ended up working, because I loved the financial services space, but I intentionally chose a startup company. Where I knew that I would have a broader perspective and not be put in some silo for some big company like a Merrill Lynch. I was able to kind of float, throughout the operation. And then I got lucky, or maybe I wasn't lucky, but after 6 months, the president of the company, stole me as his assistant. And then I had very broad latitude to do all kinds of things, from product development, marketing, distribution, administration, operations. I saw it all. And so, again, so it was pretty cool how it all came together. But I know I intentionally, sought out smaller opportunities where I could learn much, much more faster.
Mm-hmm. That's awesome.
And I think that's important for education as well.
I think you hit the nail. I think you hit the nail on the head with our motivation problem in this country. And I saw Amber smile when I smile because that's the thing. We're giving these kids experiences that they're just so just completely irrelevant to their lives and not motivating. And that, I wrote down when you said, I wrote down the passion process when you were talking about it is a process to figure it out. So that's what you did. You were motivated by something, and then you got involved with it, and then you learn more. And that's that curiosity and that drive that we don't do really well in K through 12 education.
No, and I think you're right. And by the way, and I'm going to take myself. I'm a product of inner city New York public education. My daughter, other than 1 year, went to public education. So I've seen nothing but phenomenal teachers. Mm-hmm. And again, I always talk about the organ versus the organism, and there's a difference. The collective organism, I think, called education, has some real challenges. And but the actual organs, like educators, I've seen nothing but great educators. But I do think there needs to be a wholesale reevaluation of education, because the world has changed. And again, I always think about myself as an example. Like, I'm a sports nut, but I also love math. And I think that's why I always think about fusion and what your comment about how do we do something relevant versus irrelevant? Like one of my early loves of math was reading the box scores in baseball. And I started doing math in my head. You know, he went 1 for 3 today. That's 333. But his batting average coming into the game was 286. So that moved it higher. I think there's so many cool things we could do, you know, using the things kids love, sports, let's say technology, and create fusion programs. And like, for example, I'm still amazed, like take high school football, which people are passionate about in America. But there's a lot of students in a school that aren't really passionate about football, but I'll bet you they'd be very thrilled, some of the kids would be focusing on data analytics and bioinformatics as it related to that football team. So we're teaching literally all kinds of things at one and getting everyone together. Like I think there's so many kids that are interested in science. You want to talk about STEM? Well, we should be putting some biometric devices on athletes in high schools and get the data and bring people together in cool ways that are relevant. So I think, you know, you mentioned curiosity and creativity. I literally think if someone could just take a clean sheet of paper, a blank canvas, and be as creative as possible, no holds barred, I think we could create some phenomenal, you know, opportunities for deep engagement, you know, for kids in America. And that would be much more relevant.
From your lips to God's ears, buddy.
Yeah, exactly.
That's exactly what we need. My youngest is 7, and he's a football player, and he's obsessed with sports. And from day one, his kindergarten teacher, now it's first grade, how is he so good at math? How does he know all of this stuff? Because he doesn't do anything. He doesn't throw something in the trash without having a score, and he knows he watches football games with his father, and I'm like, I don't even know what you're talking about right now, but he knows all of this information. I'm like, wow. And it's helped him. It's
of course
totally elevated him.
And again, I tell you, if I were a kid today, and I still obviously watch sports, but the data that's available now and watching sports, you know, exit velocity on a baseball. See why physics teachers are not embracing that.
Right.
And saying, okay, now all of a sudden the kid doesn't realize he's learning physics, but he is. You know, and momentum and velocity and distance and all these things you're measuring, and with pictures and the data they have, it's unbelievable, I think. And I actually think if Major League Sports took education up as a real passion and got involved in building cool interactive curriculum, I think kids would be all over it. And it doesn't matter if they're athletes, you know, or not, because look what's happening in esports. I think esports is going to, in terms of participation, is going to blow away, you know, the physical sports that we all know. So I think, and there's ways of fusing these things. So your word is the right word, which is, you know, irrelevance needs to become relevance, you know, sooner, you know, rather than later in the world of education.
I think you're speaking a lot to, I mean, we go in and we do a lot of training for teachers, and our main focus is like integration into subjects. It doesn't need to be an external thing. Like this can take place in a physics classroom, in a math classroom.
Right.
And I want to talk a little bit about the school that you worked at as the vice chair, interim chair, and the founding board member. It's School for Entrepreneurship and Tech. And can you talk a little bit about that school's focus, what your work looked like there, and kind of the programming that those students do? Because that should be an innovative model by title. Yeah,
no, there's no question that, well, let me give you a little background here, because this was actually a very entrepreneurial project because I wasn't out there looking once again to start a school. I was not doing that. What happened is there was a charter school in San Diego that simply, you know, my four corners, my paradigm, culture, financial, operational, academic, you know, was not really scoring well in any of those 4 quadrants. So I was asked if I could, you know, join the board and see if I could perhaps help do something with it, because the sponsoring entity that put this charter school up, there was a big internal civil war, to be perfectly honest with you, and everyone was fighting. And the primary financial backer of the school actually walked away. So essentially they divorced, and it's not performing. And so I was asked to join the board. And my only role in joining the board was from the person that asked me is that because you are a friend of mine. But if you ask me to join the board, I'm not your friend in the boardroom. That's my only rules, because if you ask me to become a board member for a charter school, which is public taxpayer money, I'm a steward, which is the highest calling. I'm not your friend. So however the chips fall, the chips fall. Let's see if we can create something. So we actually put together a new board, but it was a classic entrepreneurial project. And it goes back to the foundation of skills, which is, and again, people ask me, are you a fan of charter schools? I said, no, I'm not a fan of charter schools. So how could that be? I said, well, because I'm only a fan of great schools. I don't really care what you call me. I don't care if you call me, Lemonade. I just want to be a proponent of great schools, whether it's a public school, whether it's a parochial school, whether it's a private school, whether it's a charter school. Everyone should want to strive to be called one thing: great. Because so I'm not a fan of charter schools. I'm a fan of some charter schools that are great, but the collective category, I don't buy into labels. In order for that, as a result of a label, you're deemed to be great. I don't play that game. And so we said, okay, well, let's take a look at this. If we're not doing well in any of these categories, maybe we shouldn't be here. Turn the charter in and move on and let the kids get a better education elsewhere. Because if we are going to roll up our sleeves, the question is, what is our unique value proposition? Entrepreneurship 101. What is it we can do for the community that's another school isn't doing? And you have to be truly, truly, brutally honest, saying that the kids may be better off going to another school, in their neighborhood or another charter school, whatever the parents and the child, may choose. And so we actually did some classic, thinking and research and discussion among our board. Well, what can we do that's different? And we actually said there's really no one focusing on, because most of us were entrepreneurs. We didn't come from the world of education, but we were parents, we were entrepreneurs, and maybe we naturally ended up in that direction. But we said really no one's doing an entrepreneurship focused high school, and that's how it came about. And fortunately, when we asked the permission of San Diego Unified School District, they were very supportive of making the change and giving us the time to make the change, and extended the charter to give an opportunity to make the change. And so we literally, it was like changing the wheels on a moving bus, because you can't shut the school and say, hey, come back in 6 months when we're entrepreneurship. So literally it was a classic entrepreneurial business project with a turnaround, built into it. And so then it's a matter of, okay, well, how do you change the wheels on a moving bus? How do you message this to the community that something new is being built here? And everything from changing signs and logos and building a new website and communication platforms. And, we did all of that. And we involved many of the students, as much as possible. We actually, one of the first things we did, which was really cool, because we knew we had a marketing challenge in our hands. And we wanted to talk to the community and get entrepreneurs and business owners involved in the school. So we actually launched a podcast called the Ready, Set, Soar Hour. And our kids were actually the on-air hosts.
Awesome. They
did the research they invited CEOs, business leaders, politicians to come to their podcast. They did the research. They were actually working with the engineers. They did the social media component. And it was truly unbelievable how powerful these kids were, which always informs my comment, which is, if the adults will get out of the way, the kids will do amazing things. And then I take a step back further in support of educators. And if the bureaucrats would get out of the way, the educators will do great things. So the key is everyone just needs to get out of the way and let people do what they can do, and let them fly and let them fail, let them get back up and fly again. So it was a really very fun project. And again, but for me, it was also an opportunity to be, again, curious and see if, we can apply some of these concepts and ideas we've all formed in our lives. And can we apply it to a new industry called education? And it has been a great experience. But I will say this, because, I know one of the most important things we did right out of the gate, and again, this is a matter of, and I think every educator would agree with this, particularly educators that are parents, which is right away we talk about expectations. And I was very direct with many students. And when I talk about public education, because I view public education as essentially venture capital. And I have this weird mindset, which people don't necessarily have to agree with, but I view taxpayers as quasi venture capitalists. And I would tell kids openly that, the police officer, the firefighter, the business owner, the teacher, every one of them is contributing a little bit of money out of every paycheck and investing in you. So the question is, and we're all collectively venture capitalists. And my point to the kids was, perfect strangers are investing in you. People you don't even know are writing a check for your education to the tune of $9,300 a year. I was very clear with them on how much money the state of California was giving us to invest. I said, so we have 4 years and $37,000 to invest in you. So the question is, why are perfect strangers investing in you? Because in many respects, if you think about all these startup funding platforms that people, run from perfect strangers, it already exists. It's called public education. And I think it's just a matter of communicating to these kids that you've got all these investors you've never met. So the question is, what return? Because nobody invests money unless they expect a return. So the question I would ask students is, what's the return that we want from you? And the answer is, we're not looking for dividends. It's not IBM. We're looking for a societal return on investment. And that means you need to become a phenomenal citizen. You need to try to make the world a better place. You need to put more in than you take back. Whatever your path may be, whether you become Elon Musk or whether you become a police officer. But the purpose of the investment is to create a phenomenal citizen who can do great things. So we had very clear conversations with kids every chance I get. They would ask me sometimes, hey, can we do this? I said, we work for you. The question needs to be rephrased. We're here because of you. You are the customer, which was the other thing we constantly drilled in. Any business that forgets who the customer is and who's paying for it is a business that's going to fail. Now, I'm not making a comment on education per se, but or government agencies or anything in general. But we drilled that point home as a board and individually. The customer is the student and their parents, and the investor are the taxpayers. And that's it. And that has to be the center of our universe. And everything we do, everything we think, everything we act upon has to be focused on, are we delivering that societal ROI to that particular constituency? And again, it would sometimes get really funny too, because one of the things, was our board had tremendous leadership, and we accepted the responsibility and the stewardship of money. We used to have occasionally when someone would ask to spend money on something, like, hey, we need a new smart board. And I don't even want to get started on smart boards because it's one of my little pet peeves that drives me nuts. And so we would ask a question that preceded any expenditure, which is, how is it going to lift student outcomes? If you don't have an answer, then come back when you actually have an answer, because we're going to say no to the request if you can't demonstrate or at least articulate why you believe it's going to drive student outcomes higher. We're not spending the money. It's that simple. And sometimes it can get kind of silly. We wouldn't take it down to a Sharpie pen, or supplies in the classroom, but, larger expenditures, because it's very easy to sometimes buy fancy new technology and believe it's going to improve the educational product. And once again, this is just me as a non-educator giving an observation. Doesn't mean I'm right at all. It's just a perspective. And but again, going back to, Toi, you mentioned, your son's a sports nut, and so am I. And I tell people all the time, professional football is 100 years old, and after 100 years, there's still two plays: run or pass. And sometimes you just got to get back to basics. We don't need to invent fancy new plays. It's about running the ball, passing the ball, blocking, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Sure, there's derivatives and there's variations on run and pass, but there's two plays. And sometimes I think you can be too creative for the sake of creativity. It's like sometimes with ad agencies, they do phenomenal ads, but then you forgot who was, it was so funny, that commercial, but you forget actually who it was for. It kind of defeats the purpose, which is sometimes we got to get back to basics. And what are those basics? Recognizing there's a lot of things that have changed in society, in the world, and families and culture that we have to, pay attention to. You can't ignore those. It's all part of the mosaic. If we're going to always try to improve and focus on, constant improvement in the quest for excellence, then you have to look at everything. But it's not always about, creativity for the sake of creativity or new technology for the sake of new technology. Because if we had better proficiency levels, let's say in math and reading without technology 40 years ago, then we have to be intellectually honest and say, what is technology doing for us? Right. And if we're not using it well, then let's figure out a better way to use it, or else don't make the investment anymore. And
I'm so glad. I didn't mean to interrupt you. I'm just so excited that you said that, because we work with a lot of rural schools and schools that have nothing. Like they don't have a Sharpie. and we've seen those schools do some amazingly innovative things with nothing.
Yeah, well, and I'd love to. I think that's amazing too, because I'd love to see those schools, because that's an example to me. Again, what they say, necessity is the mother of invention, and you don't need all the fancy stuff to connect with a student, to get their mind to be thinking in different ways. It takes no technology, and that's why we were so thrilled, with the opportunity we had recently with the Entrepreneurship program. Again, coming from the non-educators, we weren't using technology. We were talking, we were engaging, we were doing activities. We did some improv, which, by the way, is one of the curriculum pieces. I don't think any student in America should be allowed to graduate high school without taking improv, because all of life is improv. Everything we're doing right here is improv.
Interesting stance for your platform. Dive into that.
Yes, please.
Again, here's the example that we sometimes talk to students about. All of life is improv. Every single moment. What we're doing right now on this podcast is all improv. We're just the three of us. We're here. We don't know exactly where the conversation is going to go, because I don't know every question. You don't know my answers. I don't know all of your answers to questions I may have, but we're kind of feeling our way through it. This is improv. And by the way, this is what happens in everyday life. And one of the examples I like to give to young people is that sometimes people say, wow, he's been so successful, but boy, was he lucky that he met so-and-so. And I always say, no, he wasn't lucky. Sure, he may have been in the right place at the right time to meet some powerful mentor in a person's life, but at that moment, they performed. They said something, they behaved in a certain way that impressed that person that said, hey, I'd like to give me a call. I'd like to talk to you about some things. So the key is you never know, when is going to be that serendipitous opportunity in life that can make or break you. And the question is, what are you going to do about it? Are you going to come to that serendipitous moment prepared? Can you have an ad hoc, spontaneous conversation on a broad variety of topics when you're standing in line at a Starbucks, with someone who knows, maybe a multi-millionaire business owner who wants to bring you as an intern because you impressed them. So again, to me, and again, now what I'm about to say now, I said recently to probably 30 some odd superintendents in San Diego, which is I'm a lover of science. I love science. However, I'm not a fan of the label called STEM. And I'll tell you why. Because I think it's a label. And I think a lot of schools and systems are saying, hey, we're a STEM school. We're focused on STEM. But the reality is, if your kids are not proficient in reading and math, the idea of calling yourself a STEM school is almost silly in my opinion. Because what science is there that doesn't require math? What science is there that doesn't require you to talk about your experiment or the paper you're writing? And then the last but not least, here's my view, which is you can have a phenomenal life in America without being great at science or math. And I don't want to break the hearts of math and science teachers, but it's just true. But you cannot have a great life in America unless you communicate extremely well, write well, speak well, present yourself well. You can always find somebody or something to do math and science for you, but only you can communicate who you are. And that serendipitous moment in improv and teaching public speaking skills and gesturing and the curiosity of understanding different topics and subjects and understanding how to engage in a conversation with subjects you don't understand and how you are inquisitive naturally. So again, to me, really, really going back to football and running and passing the ball, really teaching kids powerful communication skills, powerful writing skills, is a differentiator in America, in my opinion. Now, again, if you also are phenomenal at science and math, that's wonderful. I love both of those topics. And my daughter, enjoys the same love of those topics. She wants to be a doctor. And so that's the path she's following. So I love science, but I don't believe, this massive investment in this rebranding or the attaching a school or a district to something called STEM. I'm a little bit, and maybe because I reject groupthink. So when I see everyone running in one direction, I immediately say, I think I'm going to go the other direction, because something about it to me is it's built on a weak foundation called communication skills, because you can't do math and science without reading, writing skills, math skills, whether it's bar charts and graphs and all kinds of things. There's a foundational set of skills that you just have to have. And that's why, again, I think improv is important.
I could listen to you talk all day, but I don't want to run out of time before we get a chance. This is like fantastic. Can you talk a little bit about your, I tongue twist on this, asymmetrical evolution and also the SEALpreneurship program? Because we touched on it a little bit yesterday, but we wanted to talk about that and the school and how you brought that online.
I'd love to talk about that, because we're excited about this because, obviously Ed and I met over at the School for Entrepreneurship and Technology, because one of the really key things we did at the school is we created something called Passion Projects, giving kids opportunity in school time during the day. And that was the idea of the principal of the school to really, if we're telling them it's important to do it, well, then how about creating some space and time in the day to actually do it? So we launched Passion Projects, but we also launched weekly the Passion Speaker Series, where we brought in folks from all walks of life. And I'm a big believer of the power of observation and the power of listening to other people's journeys. So we brought in people from all walks of life, from pilots to emergency medicine doctors to, of course, Ed Heiner, the 20-year SEAL, to talk about. I even brought in an actor friend of mine who was in a couple of well-known movies like The Godfather and Goodfellas. And
who was it?
His name is Frank Severo. He was in Godfather Part 2, and by the way, he was unbelievable to speak for an hour extemporaneously for the kids. It was unbelievable how good he was, and they kind of really enjoyed it. So we had this Passion Speaker Series to expose them to all these different opportunities to, hey, this might be something I'm kind of passionate about. And little by little, the kids were really bonding with different areas. So Ed was one of our, passion speakers. And then he and I started working on some other things together, and kind of like, we got along really well. So the chemistry was good. Culturally, we have a lot of similar beliefs about education. So again, the foundation of asymmetrical evolution was happening by working together. And we felt we could do something. But what we really chatted about is, okay, so we're doing some good work at this one school, but then ultimately, how do you want to touch more and more lives? And so we talked about, education as an opportunity to fuse what we call, the fusion of his phenomenal, training and excellence. Because when you look at the SEALs, we know what they do, we know what they're capable of, but what it really is, it's excellence personified, and how they create excellence with the scaffolding, step by step, phase by phase. And that first phase is all about what they call the naked warrior, stripping it all down to just the basics of what you need. Kind of what we're talking about here in terms of, communication skills. Then you can scaffold and build from there. So we talked about it'd be cool to kind of create a fusion program combining all that SEAL resilience and mindset and the physicality and the mind, body, soul connection, because it's so physical. As they told me recently, I was down at Naval Special Warfare, for a whole day doing some stuff related to this program. And it's so physical, it's mental, and such a powerful concept. One of the SEALs that's on our team, his name is Gary Denham, who's our lead curriculum developer for our SEALpreneurship program, another 20-year SEAL. And that the phrase just kind of blew me away because it gets it. It's so physical, it's mental, because you have to have the right mindset to get through it. It's no longer about the physicality. It's about getting through it. And nobody gets through it alone. You get through it with your swim buddy and as a team. And so we started talking about all these different principles, and we ended up building 23 evolutions. We don't call them lessons, they're evolutions because it's the SEAL mindset. The quest for excellence is a never-ending quest because you always keep moving the goalpost on yourself. And because you always believe, okay, I made it to this level, a level I actually didn't think I was going to get to. Okay, so now what's next? And that's what they do. That's what everyone does that wants to be excellent. You're going to go to the next level and see what else you can push yourself to achieve. So we started really saying, okay, well, and Ed had written his phenomenal book, First, Fast, Fearless. Well, and he's working on his second book. So how can we take this? Let's pull this together. And we came up with these 23 evolutions. It's a fusion of the SEAL training and what we call entrepreneurship. Because to me, all of entrepreneurship begins with intrapreneurship. Ownership and knowledge of self. This is my most valuable asset. If I'm going to build anything, I have to start here. If I'm going to influence in the future, like leadership, I had a great opportunity. And when I was there the other day, I always ask everyone, one word, how do you define leadership? And I got the most phenomenal answer recently when I was at Naval Special Warfare. The answer was, that's easy, simple. It's influence. And he's right. That's the answer. If you can't influence yourself, how do you expect to ever influence anyone else? So entrepreneurship begins with intrapreneurship, self-leadership, and that discipline and the accountability that comes with self-leadership and the quest for excellence. That's what SEALpreneurship, is all about in the 23 evolutions. And now we're having so much fun. Principle number one, we're having so much fun together with the team we built and delivering it here in San Diego. We're being very careful in terms of, little by little, okay, let's constantly improving it. And every day we were doing after action reviews. Okay, how did today go? What went well? What didn't go well? How are we going to improve it the next day? And we would literally have an after action review at the end of each day with the students, and then come back the next day and we're retooling things, on the fly. And we're doing that again now because we're launching a 32-day program in December with San Pasquale Academy. And so it's this constant quest for excellence. And then and then what we did is, again, and I always say this, entrepreneurship isn't about thinking forever. It's about doing. You have to be an expeditionary marketing person. Get out there, go to market, get the customer feedback, come back to the lab, retool it, get back out there, and don't spend too much time overthinking things and too much time in the lab, because in a final analysis, your customer is going to tell you what you have. And the only way to get the customer's input is to get in front of the customer. So that's why when we approached San Diego County Office of Education, and they were extraordinarily supportive of some of the things we were talking about doing, because they had a vision of some new things that they want to really deliver, to the students. So it's a very, collaborative, symbiotic process to kind of make this all happen for the students. And the good news, again, is the feedback was so positive. We've been invited back now to do a 32-day, winter semester, program, 80 hours of classroom time, for the students. So it's pretty exciting.
That's amazing. Wow.
Yeah.
Oh, so I mean, what do you think? Because we have a lot of educators listening to this podcast. What advice would you give to a teacher or to a school leader that's interested in getting to kids this way, to their passions, and really setting them up for success as future whatever they're going to do, because like you said, we have no clue what that's going to be. So what would be your best piece of advice that you would give to an educator trying to instill this in kids?
Well, I'll tell you, the one of my favorite acronyms, that's a good question. And you're going to catch me a little bit because I'm going to have to practice the STS, stop, think, and speak. One of my favorite acronyms, but I'm known as an acronym junkie, which also brought us all together in a fun way because the SEALs live on acronyms.
Yeah, we noticed that. And I've written down so many so many different, not acronyms, but so many different, these phrases this whole time and yesterday too. Sorry.
Yeah, no, it's good. I love acronyms. So one of my favorite ones is DTD, Dare to Dream. And I think if we can try to, and by the way, this applies to teachers themselves and educators. Mm-hmm. First of all, try to instill in every single student the Dare to Dream mindset, and that anything they want to accomplish, they can accomplish. The flip side of the equation is the educators have to also do some Dare to Dreaming, that I can truly make a difference, in the life of this particular person. And I'm literally think like a venture capitalist. This person has an unbelievable set of skills and capabilities. And how do I get it out? And try to inspire curiosity. It's one of my favorite words. There's a difference between intelligence and being an intellectual, and the difference is curiosity. Trying to instill a sense of curiosity in the students, because they have so much technology these days to answer all of their questions and help them apply the knowledge. So I would say to a lot of educators, understand that it's not about knowledge dissemination any longer. It's about knowledge application, and try to inspire in kids that quest for knowledge and self-knowledge. And that's where it begins. I really believe it starts at that foundational level, that you are the most important thing in the world to yourself. You are your most valuable asset. How are we going to turn into something super special for the world and just make the world a better place, student by student? The other thing I would say as well, and I realize the system doesn't always let now to happen, but I do have the belief that you can't make an omelet unless you crack some eggs. And I think educators have tremendous opportunity in the four walls of their classroom, that this is my lab, and I'm going to do some amazing things here and fight off those bureaucrats as much as possible and break some eggs and innovate it in the four walls of your classroom that you run, you command. It's your stage. Those are your students, and make something special happen. And again, I realize sometimes that's easier said than done. But hey, collectively, if everyone adopts that mindset, the bureaucrats can't stop anything. So
Toy's just like, yep, preach. Let's just have. I really liked your approach earlier. We were talking about like viewing venture capital and like the investment and how you articulate to your students. I think any educator that's listening could also take that approach when they communicate. I mean, especially Toy in our rural schools, like these students are like, I don't have anything. I'm like, no, like these taxpayers are investing this amount of money in you annually. I mean, that's a really good approach, I think, specifically for economically disadvantaged schools.
Well, yeah, no, I agree. And by the way, we use that same language with everyone in the building responsible for educating. And and maybe it's because we came from the quote, the business world, but we would say, well, let's talk about that. Maybe that's something we'll do next semester. And then my blood pressure would go up. I said, listen, we only have 725 days to make a difference in the life of this young person. 180 some odd days times 4 years. I said, so we don't have a semester to burn. We have $37,000, 725 days. We have a limited supply, limited time. Let's get our butts moving. And no, don't come back to me next semester and start something. Why can't we do something different today? And that was the philosophy, because we don't have time to waste. You only have 4 years, and not even 4 years. It's really 2 years in terms of actual classroom time to make a difference in the life of this person. There's no time to waste. There's no money to burn. So it's literally, and that's why, again, sometimes it's the sense of mission and purpose that has to be constantly reinforced in the minds of everyone in the education system. This is our student. That's our customer. Here's who's paying for it. Here's the limited amount of time and money we have to deliver results. There's no time to waste. So
it's such an entrepreneurial approach to education. And I think that having that entrepreneurial background really, I can't imagine the difference that made, having a board of primarily entrepreneurs and not educators creating that foundation and how.
Yeah. And again, obviously it's a very, very, dynamic process, and you have an engaged principal who buys in, and you have, teachers that buy in. So you got to pull all those elements together. And in this case, it was an example where, you could necessarily, pick your team from the get-go. It was already an up and running, functioning school. So you've got a team there, and you got to bring them, together and coalesce around these new things we're doing. And, there's always challenges, but those are opportunities for improvement. That's why, to me, there's no such thing. We were teaching the kids this language, and it's one of the important things we talk about in the program is language discipline. And so there's not a problem. It's just an opportunity for improvement. OFI, there's another acronym for you. So approach everything as an opportunity for improvement, not a problem. Because as soon as you say problem, your entire biochemistry changes. You don't realize it. As soon as you identify it as a problem, everything changes. And how you approach it, how your brain reacts to what it hears. And people always, people think, the ears don't hear, the brain hears. The ears are just an instrument to pick up a signal. So it's important that the language going in is really, really critical to get your brain to respond properly. So
yeah,
language is important.
I think that's so true, that we need to, we really need to address that with kids, and it's like a lot of our schools, a lot of these kids have the self-defeating prophecy kind of self-defeating, limitations that they're putting on themselves because they don't internalize the positivity. But we are up against our time, so we're going to wrap it up. But this was so cool. We need to have you back. I can't even tell you. I ran out of paper over here.
Well, you're very kind. We'd be happy to come back anytime, whether it's myself, Ed, other members of the team. We love talking about entrepreneurship. I love what you're doing here with this whole entrepreneurship education movement in America and the group you formed. So any way we can support it, we'd love to, because it's critically important that we inject this into schools. I would argue this is more important than STEM, and I know it makes me a bit of a heretic, but that's how I feel.
We'll cut that part out. No, I'm just kidding. We're not cutting anything out.
That's okay.
It'll be the soundbite. So before we go, how can people that are curious about what you're doing, how can they get in touch with you? What's the best way? Twitter, website?
Yeah, you can certainly. You can always email me. I'll take emails all times of day and night. I don't take email between midnight and 4:30 in the morning though. So try not to email that, but they can email me. Charles@quinspire.com is always the best way probably to reach me. I don't want to give it my cell phone number because then I get bombarded with text messages.
Yeah, let's not do that. But we'll put your email in the promotion for this. So that's awesome.
Be happy to. And I would say go ahead and listen to some of the Sealpreneurship podcasts, which we've started a podcast called Sealpreneurship. You can find it on iTunes, Spotify, and your favorite podcast listening app, and that may give some of your educators some idea as to what we're trying to instill. And we have to be collaborative. It's not we don't share the not invented here syndrome. So anything we can share, we'd love to. Anything that we can grab from you and your entrepreneurship educators, we want to do that.
Yeah.
So we have to
rising tide raises all boats, right?
Exactly right.
I think I totally botched that quote, but you got it.
No, you got it.
We got it. Well, thank you so much. And this has been really rewarding, and we will definitely stay in touch. So we appreciate it.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate the opportunity. Have a great one.
You too. Thanks, Charles.
Bye-bye now.